All right, I've got a stipulation to read to the jury. Members of the jury, when parties agree that certain facts are true, that is called a stipulation of fact. You must accept the stipulated facts as having been proven. However, the significance of these facts, as with all facts, is for you to decide. In this case, the stipulated facts that you must accept as true are: the deceased persons located on July 31st, 2015 at 4605 Deerfield Drive are the same persons that Dr. Andrea Minyard performed autopsies on August 1st, 2015. Second, the bodies located on July 31st, 2015 and autopsied on August 1st, 2015 are that of Voncile Smith, John Smith, and Richard Smith. 3, identification of the deceased in count 1 is Voncile Smith. Count 2 is John Smith. Count 3 is Richard Smith. All right, State, call your first witness.
State calls Andrew Smith.
Good morning. Good morning, sir. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give is the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you. Please be seated.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Will you state your full name, please?
Andrew Smith.
And where are you employed?
I'm a special agent with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
How long have you been with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Almost 2 years.
And where were you before FDLE?
I worked with the Escambia County Sheriff's Office for 5 years.
How long have you been in law enforcement total?
Almost 7 years.
So let me take you back to July of 2015. I know it's been a while. Were you dispatched for a welfare check?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
What is a welfare check?
A welfare check is typically when someone calls the sheriff's office and says, you know, they're concerned about someone's safety. Typically, maybe they haven't talked to that person in a certain period of time, and they just want the sheriff's office to check and see if that person's okay.
Okay. And where were you dispatched specifically?
It was 4605 Deerfield Drive.
And for the record, what was the date that you were dispatched?
It was Friday, July 31st, 2015.
Okay, and approximately what time?
I think I was dispatched around 0940, and then I arrived about 0953.
Okay, so is 09:53, 9:53 a.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And was this a house or a business?
It was a house.
When you first got there, was anyone else there?
Yes, ma'am. There was an individual named Hal McCord.
Okay. Were you the first deputy to arrive, or was anyone else there?
I believe I was the first one there, correct?
Okay, very good. Now, did you, don't say what he told you, but did you speak with Mr. McCord?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. And did he provide you with a family member's name?
Yes, ma'am, he did.
Who was that?
That was Donald Hartung.
Okay. And then were you able to look up, I guess, contact information for Mr. Hartung?
Yes, I used my in-car computer, and I was able to find an address for him.
Okay. And the in-car computer, does that have like driver's license information, things of that nature?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you say you were able to get an address?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
All right. And what was the address?
It was 6730 Klondike Road.
Okay. And did you drive to Mr. Hartung's house?
Yes, ma'am, I did. It was approximately maybe 3 miles away, so I drove over there.
And did you knock on Mr. Hartung's door?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Did he answer?
Yes, ma'am, he did.
Okay. And do you see Mr. Hartung in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay. And I know there's a lot of people at that table, so if you could just point to him and identify what he's wearing.
He's the individual sitting in the middle, the darker suit and glasses.
Let the record reflect the witness identified.
Thank you, Judge. Now, did you tell Mr. Hartung why you were at his house?
Yes, ma'am. I just basically explained that Richard's supervisor had contacted us and hadn't heard from him in a few days, and he was concerned about his family. So I basically asked Mr. Hartung, when was the last time you spoke with your family or seen them?
Okay, and what did Mr. Hartung tell you?
He said that basically every Tuesday he goes over to his family's house and cooks them dinner.
Okay.
And so he was there Tuesday of that week from like 1 in the afternoon to about 5:30.
Did you ask him if he had seen his family since that Tuesday?
I did. He said that was the last time he had seen them.
All right. And did he tell you if Richard was there?
He told me that Richard was not there. He said he hadn't seen Richard in about 2 weeks. And he said Richard's normally not there because he works late, so he comes home late.
Now, what was Mr. Hartung's demeanor as you were talking to him about his family?
He was very just calm, relaxed.
Did you go back to Deerfield Drive?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And did you ask Mr. Hartung to follow you?
Yes, ma'am, I asked if he would follow me in his vehicle.
And did he?
Yes, ma'am, he did.
Okay. Now, when you got back to Deerfield Drive, did you ask Mr. Hartung for permission to go in the house?
I did. Based on the circumstances, I asked Mr. Hartung if he would be willing to write a written statement that basically said, hey, I'm concerned for my family. I'll give permission to the sheriff's office to enter the residence to check to see if everyone was okay.
Okay. I mean, did you basically tell him what to write?
I gave him that phrasing, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, did Mr. Hartung have a key?
No, ma'am, I don't think he did, because we did call EMS and fire out to basically to open the door if there was a deadbolt or something like that engaged. We didn't want to break down the door.
Okay. Now, you just said that other EMS and who responded?
Fire.
Okay. And was entry made into the Smith home?
Yes, ma'am.
How?
So actually, I think it was EMS, whenever they got there, we checked the back door and the deadbolt was not engaged, so they just used a car to basically jimmy the door and pop it open.
Okay. Do you know why you were using the back door?
I don't remember. I'm not sure.
That's fair. All right, so the back door's jimmied. You go inside the back door of the house and tell the jury, I mean, what are you walking into? What do you first see?
So as we walk in the back door, I immediately smelled a very foul odor, similar to a dead body. It was me, Sergeant Neesmith, and Deputy Singleton.
Okay.
We walked in, we ended up going towards the right of the residence, which was through like the living room and the kitchen and down the hallway. I know I saw a small white dog and there was like dog feces on the ground. As we went down the hallway, we still weren't sure if there was maybe someone actually in the residence, so we were obviously calling out saying, hey, sheriff's office, come out, whatever. As we went down the hallway, we smelled an overwhelming smell of a dead body, but we wanted to go back and check the other side of the residence first just to make sure there wasn't anyone over there.
And let me ask you this, I should ask you it first. When you first go in this home, what is your primary objective?
Well, at first, we're just trying to see if anyone's there and maybe injured or something like that. So we're really not sure at that point. Obviously, once I walked in, I had that smell, and so I was kind of assuming basically that there was going to be someone probably dead inside the residence. But we didn't know if there was still someone else there. That was a lot.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So you go from the hallway where you smell the overwhelming smell, and you go back toward where?
It was back to the other side of the house, so back through like the living room and the kitchen. Back to where we initially made entrance, and to the left, there was a laundry room with a door that was closed. So we ended up deciding to go through that closed door. As I opened the door, I immediately saw blood spatter on some cardboard boxes that were sitting up on a bed. And then on the floor directly in front of me, there was like a large mass of like clothing and blankets. So due to the blood spatter, I put on some gloves, and then I started to peel back the clothing and the blankets. And as I started to peel it back, I saw a large shoe. It looked to be on like a white man's body. I touched the ankle. It was cold. Then there was another large mass to my right. It was like on like a love seat. So I did the same. I started peeling the clothing back and the blankets. And then I saw it was a bare white foot. It also appeared to be a male. I touched it. It was cold, and there was a lividity present.
Okay, let me stop you real quick. You say you're peeling the layers back. Is it like the entire mound, or is it just a small area?
Just a small area. Like, I would just peel it back just a little bit just to get to whatever was basically hiding or hidden underneath the blanket. So I wasn't peeling them all the way off. I probably peeled them maybe a couple inches back.
Okay. And this area, or describe the room that they were in. I mean, how would you describe it?
I guess it was kind of like a bedroom. Like, there was a bed in there, but obviously with all the clothing and everything, it was kind of, I guess, chaotic or whatnot. But there was a love seat and there was a bed in there, so it appeared someone would probably sleep in there.
Okay. And before you went into that room, was the door open or closed?
It was closed.
Excuse me. Did you pronounce those two individuals you just described as deceased?
I did. We obviously didn't know who they were, but I pronounced them at approximately 11:14
AM?
a.m. Yes, ma'am.
And then where did you go from that room?
Due to the previous smell that we had encountered in the hallway, we went back to the other end of the residence, went down the hallway. There was another bedroom door that was closed. So we opened up that door, and there was a huge mound of clothing and blankets on the floor of that bedroom. I did the same thing. I started just slowly peeling back a little bit. I saw it appeared to be like an elderly female's hand. It was a white female. Touched it. It was cold. There was some lividity in the fingers, and so I pronounced her at approximately 11:17 a.m. Sorry.
That's okay. Now, you said that you put gloves on before you touched these individuals?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
So at that point, you found 3 bodies, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then what do you and the other 2 law enforcement officers do at that point?
We backed out of the residence. My supervisor, I believe, had already contacted investigations and crime scene.
Okay.
So they were already on the way, and we just backed out of the residence and waited for them to arrive.
Okay. And then do you make sure that no one else enters the residence?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Where was, do you know where this defendant, Donald Hartung, was at that point when you back out?
I believe he was standing in the driveway while we were inside the house.
And for the record, is 4605 Deerfield Drive located within Escambia County, Florida?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Did homicide investigators respond?
Yes, ma'am.
Crime scene personnel?
Yes, ma'am.
Kind of chaos going on out there?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Did you keep a crime scene log while you were there on July 31st, 2015?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay, and what is a crime scene log?
A crime scene log basically just is a list of names to determine the people who actually entered the scene.
Okay, and what's the purpose of keeping that list?
I mean, basically it's to make sure we know who's been to the scene, and if there is possible like contamination or something like that, we would know basically like a footprint or something like that.
In other words, like if your boot was found somewhere on the
Exactly.
property, you could say, hey, I was there, okay.
Correct.
And do you remember who entered the crime scene on July 31st?
It was myself, Sergeant Neesmith, Deputy Singleton, Crime Scene Tech Eliopoulos, Crime Scene Tech Rollins. Can I check my report?
Sure. If it helps refresh your memory, just don't read from it.
Okay. Deputy Infinger, Lieutenant Gilmore, Sergeant Coxwell, Deputy Tatum, Deputy Hendershot, Deputy Wirt, Sergeant Bjornson, and Deputy Jackson.
How long were you there that day, to the best of your memory?
I was there approximately 3 hours.
Those are my questions. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Please, the court. Agent Smith, just a few things I want to go over with you.
Sir, no problem.
Now, You drove to my client's home, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
And when you drove to his home, was he cooperative with you?
Yes, sir, he was.
Did he answer your questions?
Yes, sir, he did.
And did he answer them truthfully, as best you could tell?
Yeah, based on the information I had.
And you asked him to follow you back to his mother's home, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And when you went into the house, you asked him to wait outside, did you not?
Yes, sir, I did.
And that's standard procedure to ask the relatives to stay out of the house when you and other deputies enter a home.
Sure, because we don't know what we're going to encounter.
And it was Sergeant Neesmith and you, it was a Deputy Singleton, did you say?
It was Sergeant Neesmith and Deputy Singleton, correct?
And the three of you entered the house together?
Yes, sir, we did.
And did you split up or did you all stay together?
We stayed together, sir.
And you, when you came out, are you the person that informed my client that his family had been murdered?
I believe that was, obviously, we all walked out to Mr. Hartung. It was probably me and Deputy Singleton that first approached him.
And in the report, it said that he was upset and you put him in a patrol car. Is that correct?
That's correct. He wasn't crying or necessarily emotional, but people respond to things differently. Obviously, being told that 3 of your family members were dead, I didn't know if he was maybe just kind of in shock or something. He wasn't responding that well, so I just had him sit down in the car.
That was different than he was when you came up to his house, because he responded to you when you came to his house.
I mean, he was responsive and he would answer questions and stuff. I would say it was kind of similar. He was very calm, but I just didn't know, people respond to emotional things differently.
Did he ever tell you that he didn't want you to search his family's home?
No, he did not.
In fact, he absolutely gave you permission, is that correct?
Yes, sir. I basically said, would you write a written statement, and he complied.
And he could have said, no, I don't want to do that, right?
He could have.
And he didn't.
That's correct. He did not.
You indicated that you kept a log for the first 3 hours you were there, is that correct?
Yes, the crime scene log was while I was there on scene.
And once you left, what did you do with your crime scene log?
It would have been passed over to someone there, probably a crime scene tech.
Who did you give it to?
I do not remember, sir.
Well, let me ask you this. You've got a list of the folks that you said came in to the crime scene while you were there.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
If there were, which crime scene tech is on there that you might have given it to?
The only crime scene techs that I have on here are Rollins and Eliopolis. A crime scene log could be kept by anyone. I don't remember. That would just be my assumption.
Okay. So you don't have any idea who you gave it to?
No, sir, I don't.
And after you left, you have no idea who went in and went out of the house. Is that correct?
That's correct. Once I leave the scene, I don't know who enters the scene.
Did you, as part of this investigation, ever return to the house?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you, after initially finding the bodies and being there, did you ever have any other involvement with this case other than coming to court?
No, sir, I did not.
Where did you have Mr. McCord stay while you were there?
I believe he was standing out in the driveway as well.
And did you also inform him that the Smiths were deceased, or did you only tell Mr. Hartung?
I don't remember. I'm not sure. I would think he would probably make that assumption based on all the people responding, but I don't specifically remember saying anything to him.
Just one moment.
Sure.
One moment, Joe. I have nothing further. Thank you, Your Honor.
Can you redirect?
Briefly. Mr. Smith, you said when Mr. Hartung was notified his family was deceased, he was calm like he was when you first talked to him?
Yeah, he was calm. He didn't respond in an extremely positive or negative way. It was just Nonchalant.
Nonchalant, okay. And Mr. Griffith asked you, when you first went to Mr. Hartung's house, if he answered your questions truthfully. Do you remember that question?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay. Let me ask you this. I mean, you don't know if Mr. Hartung was telling the truth, do you?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so you just know whatever he told you?
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, members of the jury, at this time, we're going to take a short break, so I'm going to have you retire to the jury room, and we'll be back with you shortly. All right, please be seated. All right, so we'll go to courtroom 404 with counsel, defendant, and the next witness will be Mr. McCord, and of course, attorneys for the federal government. So we'll go there, we'll open up you there just a minute.